I've read that you lately hate when people ask you, how are you?
Oh, eh, the funny part is the tonality, right? It's just like, I'm okay, I'm good.
Okay, so let's start. From Columbia Journalism School in New York City, this is Juan Manuel Benitez Wants to Know. And she's one of the more independent, feisty, and unafraid voices in the New York State Senate. Jessica Ramos, born and raised in Queens, former union organizer and chair of the Labor Committee, has never been one to stay quiet or play it safe. This year, she ran to become the city's first Latina mayor, and the campaign became one of the most talked about political stories in New York. Thank you for being with me today.
Thank you for inviting me, Juan.
So, Jessica, I need to start by saying that I would like to title this episode, What the Hell Happened to Jessica Ramos?
Well, Jessica Ramos is still here in Jackson Heights, working every day. I'm still a mom, I'm still a wife. So what happened to me, I think, in terms of work, was that I gave myself the opportunity to be a lot more clear about who I am, not only what I stand for, that's never changed, but also my perspective on the political spectrum in New York, and I would say in our country as a whole. And so I think I'm only, getting better with age and much more in tune with who I am.
I'm asking because we're still trying to understand your endorsement of former Governor Andrew Cuomo in the Democratic mayoral primary back in May, June. What happened there?
I think it was very clear that at that given point, the race had come down to two people. And it wasn't the two people that I expected the race to come down to. I honestly thought that Speaker Adams and our Comptroller Lander and I would do a lot better, given our records, given the serious way with which we treat legislating or governing. But that unfortunately wasn't the case. The two front runners ended up being the person with the most amount of scandals and the person with the least amount of experience. And so understanding that I am born and raised in a district that has been ground zero for so many things, for the pandemic, for Hurricane Ida, for the migrant influx, and we've been the kind of safe haven for people from all over the world to come for a very long time. I mean, we've seen ICE on our streets ever since the Trump administration began. And so that's usually the perspective with which I look at these things and make the political decisions that I do. I understand that ideologically, people may be confused. I want to reiterate that I have not taken away any of my criticisms of former Governor Cuomo. But the fact of the matter is, I don't want to see families separated in New York. I don't want to see people displaced. And when you put together those two people, I expressed who I preferred.
Totally. And you explained that really well to my colleague at the New York editorial board, Ben Max, last month. But I mean, Jessica, I don't even know how many times you were on my previous show, Pura Política, on New York One Noticias. And so many times you would be extremely critical of then Governor Cuomo.
And
not only that,
so.
when so many women accused him or alleged having been sexually harassed by him, you also asked for his resignation. So what changed since then to this year? Because we were all extremely surprised that you decided to basically end your campaign and endorse Cuomo.
Yeah, I understand. I, again, made the decision based on the two people who were ahead and clearly nobody else was going to seemingly break through, not even Comptroller Lander, who at that point was in essentially a far third place, at least in the polls. I don't want, I have not tried to make any apologies or express any sort of forgiveness for the many things that Governor Cuomo has done, has been accused of. I even said on the record that, any and all procedures against him should continue. When we called for his resignation and he acquiesced, I think it was largely because a lot of those accusations were now being litigated and were standing in the way of him governing. And so, again, I firmly believe that I would make a better mayor. I still truly believe that. But the fact, and it's a very, I think, sober way of looking at it, is that it was between those two people. And what I'm thinking about is who is going to be able to hopefully keep as many of my neighbors' families together. I mean, there's only so much rock throwing that you can do, which is easy to do when you're in dissension. But when you are in charge, who are you going to throw rocks at? It can't just
So you still think to this day, because he's on the ballot in November, you still think that Andrew Cuomo would be a better mayor than Zoran Mamdani?
Well, look, I think Andrew Cuomo is clearly appealing more and more to the right as we speak. He's, I think, now trying to court the court courteously while votes. Zoran Mamdani is very clearly the Democratic nominee. And, I'm going to leave people to make that decision for themselves.
Yeah, but what's the decision that Jessica Ramos is going to make?
We have party primaries for a reason. And so I think, I may be in disagreement. I think that, I don't believe that the extremes of any ideology are conducive to proper governing, especially in a city as diverse, not only ethnically, but ideologically as ours. I mean, we like to think that everybody's progressive. In New York City, not everybody is progressive. And we are living at a time where we need things to move forward.
So you will be voting in November for Zoran Mamdani.
So I did not say who I was going to vote for, but it's good to see that your interviewing style hasn't changed, Juan Manuel. I will be voting in the primary. And right now I'm firmly, focused on my career and on doing my job. I'm in my district office right now.
We've known each other for many, many years, since you were a staffer for the de Blasio administration, and maybe even earlier when you were
over a decade.
Yes, in labor organizing. When I saw the news that you were endorsing Cuomo, the first thing I thought about is maybe Jessica got tired of Albany. Happens to a lot of legislators in New York City. They travel, spending a lot of time up there, even more so for people with families like you. And she thinks that Cuomo is going to win the primary and then the election. So maybe she wants to come back to the city and get a job at City Hall. Was that part of the equation?
For me running for office, in part, I think, not only have I been very concerned about the future of our city and the current mismanagement of the city, I've been going back and forth to Albany now for, since 2019. So spending more time with my family certainly is alluring to me. I also think that I want people to understand that being mayor is an administrative job. Being a legislator is much more about advocacy. And advocating and introducing bills, advocating on behalf of constituents, on behalf of causes. Being mayor, being governor, being president, being an executive is asking to be the person in charge, and actually having to implement your ideas and having to manage and administrate a city and doing a lot of the mundane things that we would like to see done, right? Like or having our garbage picked up, having potholes filled. So I mean that's how I've viewed what has transpired here. I want us to have a city that is beautiful and that we can be proud of. But you know, there was never a discussion about my employment. It was more so what it came down to, as I described before.
Okay, so there was part of the equation was the possibility of maybe coming back to the city and work
Well, had I
again at
won,
City
yeah,
Hall,
that was part of my calculation in running for mayor. Absolutely.
and also part of the calculation when endorsing Andrew Cuomo.
No, I don't think so. That was not something that he and I discussed. Um, More so for me, I made it very clear to Cuomo what issues were important to me, what I expected from the next mayor. I mean, ultimately, aside from everything else, Andrew Cuomo was someone who's never been a legislator, who's never had to represent a catchment or a district. So, that's an experience that he lacks. And I think that, New York, having worked at City Hall and having legislated in Albany, I think City Hall is a very different place. So that was more so what I, and especially all of the concerns around Donald Trump.
Okay. And then I also thought when I saw the news of you endorsing Cuomo, maybe Jessica is getting older. And it happens to a lot
That's
of
for
us
sure.
at our workplaces that someone younger, fresher, all like shows up all of a sudden, and without having done any of the work or paying dues, all of a sudden that person is a star, and we are relegated to a second or third role, and that you saw Zora Mamdani as some sort of like that kid who just got in here, and what does he think who does he think he is?
Oh, I don't know that I thought, who does he think he is? I mean, I think he ran an incredible campaign. He was able to engage young people like never before. He was able to engage gentrifiers like never before. I mean, there are many different types of New Yorkers, right? And there are those of us who are born and raised here. There are people who come from other countries. There are people who come from other states. And I think that, overall, the population in New York City has been changing. And he was able to connect with those, with that population, with those groups. So it's not surprising, of course, that in having a built-in operation, right? Having, for example, the Democratic Socialists of America, who are a disciplined group, who are used to going out and knocking on doors. I mean, he had people from other states come and knock on doors in New York City. I imagine that's going to happen again, even though the election doesn't affect them back home where they are from directly, anyway. So I think, definitely young, definitely, a very limited work product. Am I getting older? Absolutely, every day by the second. Something that's usually very hard for a Latina to contend.
Some people are comparing him already to former President Barack Obama, to Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. The truth is that a year ago, barely anyone knew who Zora Mamdani was. And today, he's not only a city star, but also a national and international star. Why do you think this is happening?
I think the media sees how much he's been able to resonate via social media. I mean, he had run, a campaign that is heavily invested in video and different social media platforms, and I think that is novel. That's a novel way or an untraditional way of campaigning. at least how we've seen up until now. I think, winning the election is one thing. I mean, then you actually have to do the job, and we will see what that means, and how he decides who he decides to hire, what his management style is. None of us really know what his management style is. We don't have any examples of that. So it'll be on him to prove himself at that given point in time. Again, I think it's very different going from a legislator to an executive and being the actual person in charge.
Like I said in the intro, you're not afraid of upsetting people, of speaking your mind. And in the past, we've seen how you've said that the Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she's not in the district enough, or she's not working hard enough for her constituents. We've seen you not having a great relationship with Assemblywoman Catalina Cruz. She represents a part of the community you represent in the Senate, or with other legislators. And now you're going to have a Senate challenger, that is Assemblywoman Jessica González-Rojas, that she is going to run for the seat that you have right now next year. She's getting all the support from so many different levels. So do you think this decision shows that maybe you're miscalculating how you are approaching the collaborative job of any elected official? Do you fear that that decision of endorsing Andrew Cuomo is going to end your elective office career?
I'm not someone who lives my life in fear. And it's not my intention to just say what I mean, no matter what. I decided to first run for office after being in government for a few years and being in public service in different ways previously. Like I was a member of the community board before I even worked at City Hall. I ran because I believe that good government is possible. And I believe that people should be able to depend on government to help provide some stability in their quality of life. And so with that, and in taking my job seriously, I do think that in the era of Trumpism and sort of that style of doing politics, we've seen that same style come from the opposite end of the spectrum. And so knowing my district the way I do, I know how important it is for us to do constituent services, for example, to make sure that we have a full team, that our office is open every day, that we are actively getting people through the doors. And so when I've been critical in the past, I've been critical based on that, right? My criticism a few years ago was about the Congresswoman's office at the time not being open regularly. Lo and behold, by the end of that year, she closed the district office altogether. My understanding is that she now shares with other legislators. It's not so easy to be able to get that to get that help. I mean, she has some mobile office hours that she does, but it would.
When was the last time you spoke to her?
Oh my gosh, years ago.
Is that good politics for your constituents, not talking to the representative in Congress?
Well, when we were
of
getting
many
along,
of your people in your district,
she wasn't really reaching out proactively either. I mean, I think the last time we spent, I suppose quality time together was after Hurricane Ida. She came to that part of the district on the day that former President Joe Biden came to visit. She was there that day. So there have been times where we've needed serious help and advocating locally in a way that, that matters.
This is what I understand, because you've also been extremely vocal in your career about fighting for Latino residents, for Latino issues. You're really big also on, like you talked about how you're a Latina representing your constituents in Albany. How is it that you're not in touch with the person who represents many of your constituents in Congress?
Our offices are certainly in touch. I'll tell you, just a few weeks or maybe a few months ago at this point, we had a press conference here in my office about the flood mitigation funding that had been taken away by President Trump. And she sent a representative. And this is what I meant about mobile office hours. We've referred people to her mobile office hours when they are posted. And which what I'm saying is it's not necessarily helpful, especially to seniors or people who have trouble going around. I mean, we have sent some of our constituents also to, for example, Congresswoman Grace Meng's office, who has also the other half of our district. So it's not, it's not, I think, as combative as the media likes to portray. It's not like we're throwing barbs at each other. All I've ever said about her was at that point that I wish, the constituent services or that the district office had been readily open. And I asked for more responsiveness. The response was the opposite. And then with my assemblywoman, it's been an interesting relationship since she moved here. She moved here, she ran for office, she won, she ousted someone who was born and raised in this community. I think that relationship has, it's been very unfortunate, that both of us as Colombian women, as women who care about working people, as women who have some experience in government before holding elected office, that there would be so much disparagement and sabotage. I mean, I'll tell you, I'll share an anecdote that I haven't shared before. We both once supported a judicial candidate. This was now several years ago. And the campaign for that judicial candidate reached out to me, not knowing me personally, to let me know that there was a certain someone taking my name off the palm card, or making sure that, there was letters missing from my name on the palm card for that candidate. I mean, it's those types of things that, perhaps has made me, instead of, getting back at them, keep some distance, and then just put my head down and continue doing my work. I've never gotten in the way of anybody doing their work. I still vote for their bills. I still co-sponsor their bills if I think they're good bills, they're beneficial bills. I try to legislate based on merit and based on the need of my constituents. But that one's, I think, especially hurtful, considering that we're, at least my parents are from the same country where she was born, and our overlap. I mean, she is my assembly.
I'm curious to know. So when you both bump into each other at the Capitol in Albany, do you talk?
She
Do you
avoids
say
me at all
hi?
costs. And I frankly, I'm there to do work, and that's what I'm doing.
Okay, let's talk about your campaign, because you're talking about messaging, you're talking about social media strategy. I have to say, like, you've come to speak to my Columbia students, like, I think 2 or 3 times. You even came.
I never
Uh,
say no to you.
I know, and you came the week or the day after or the day before you announced your campaign for mayor last year, and the students loved you, and they thought that you were a great speaker, great messenger, 2 years in a row. Then another set of students that I had here at Columbia University last year, I show them the campaign launch videos of Brad Lander, the city controller, who also ran for mayor, and your launch video. And my students thought that your video was so much better. They connected
Right.
with your video and your messaging way better than they connected to Landers. Then we also had you on having breakfast with us with the New York editorial board early this year. We sat down with you. It was a great interview. Like all of us, my colleagues and I, we looked at each other like, oh, she's really good. She is really good.
Thank
So,
you.
so what happened? Why do you think that you were unable to get enough funding to run an effective campaign and to establish those coalitions? Because people say like, well, endorsements are not that important. They are. When you have
Yeah, they
unions
are.
backing you, they are working for you. Basically, they are like volunteers for the campaign, also delivering the message on your behalf. So what happened to your campaign?
Well, there's endorsements and then there's endorsements. I wouldn't say that every endorsement is the same, because some do come with, actual volunteers, come with a donation, come with, maybe hosting a fundraiser. Look, I think it's hard for me to ask money. I'll start with like my personal. I think for me, it's just personally hard to ask for money. Growing up working class, being a woman, I mean, not to sound like a stereotype, but asking for money is not the easiest thing for me. What I know how to do is work. And which is why I think I'm known for my work ethic. But I think also for a good while, I was stuck in this it's a weird sandwich, right? I mean, Andrew Cuomo was standing in the way of me being able to secure many union endorsements that I was hoping to receive. And this is especially true, I think, of the building trades and of a few of the others who, move many members. I mean, they're extraordinary unions. And so they were holding out for him to get in. We didn't know if was going to happen, and then he finally did. And many of them were reluctant to make a slate endorsement and not endorse more than one person. That was a conversation I had many times. And then I think on the other end, I think it's been, very clear that, I differ in the way that I want to do work than some of the other progressives. I think they, very much were avoiding, me being on the WFP slate. And there was no recognition of, the work that we had done together. And a lot of people would rather just say, don't donate to her. Though that's kind of, the dynamic that I was in for the majority of the campaign.
Do you still have some debt to pay? Like, is that
I
going well,
still
or
I
is it going
still
to take some
have
time?
I still have some things to clear up. And I'm confident that we will. I also don't know how much of this I'm supposed to be talking about given that I'm in the district office, but I'm trying to be as um, you know.
I think it'll be fine. Let's switch gears because on this podcast, we also try to learn about the human behind the newsmaker or the elected official. So tell us a little bit about the memories that you have growing up in New York City.
Well, I think like many Colombian-American children in Western Queens, the late 80s was a rough time. Our parents fled a country that was at civil war, right? It was always the conservatives against the liberals, especially after 1948. But then there's also, of course, the cartels, all of the different guerrillas, the paramilitary and the military. And so, some of my early childhood memories, particularly of Jackson Heights, are frankly not great. They were of, my father being very upset, coming home with El Diario La Prensa tucked under his arm, which is how I learned how to read. He would put me on his lap and he would help me sound out all the words in el diario. And that's how I learned how to read when I was 3 years old. Unfortunately, some of those stories were not great. And, by the time the 90s came around and the cartels were really losing their power, a lot of their war played out on Roosevelt Avenue and here in Jackson Heights. So I remember corners and places being cordoned off by the police because there had been violence there, a massacre there the night before. I remember when Manuel de Dios Udanwe was shot and killed, then called El Mesón Asturias, right off 83rd Street and Roosevelt Avenue. For those listening, that today is called Juquila, which is a great Mexican restaurant that you should go to. But that was called El Mesón Asturias, and a 16-year-old sicario was paid to murder an incredibly courageous journalist from El Diario who was trying to, tell the truth about what was happening with the drug trade. That marked a lot of who I am because it inspired my father to get involved. My father became obsessed with making a good name for Colombia. Colombian organizations helped found the Colombian Parade, became a community board member himself. And then I got my first job on Roosevelt Avenue and 83rd Street. In 1999, I worked answering phones at a law firm for 7 years. And that's where I met day laborers, and I met sex workers, and I met all sorts of people who needed help. And that's what really built my views and informed the values that I continue to espouse today. It hasn't been easy out here. I know, look, a lot can be said about Roosevelt Avenue today. But I think that it's important for people to understand that we've had challenges forever. Sex work has existed on Roosevelt Avenue since the vaudevillian era, if you can believe it. And the federal government could help by giving immigrants work permits. It will make sure that there aren't voids for these bad actors to fill. That's my PSA.
Tell me if there's a corner building place in the city that you see getting landmark status.
I would really have to think about that one. Being a good Jackson Heights person, I'm a big believer in landmarking. Jackson Heights is a historic neighborhood. I would like there to be more Latino landmarks in New York in general. I feel like not enough of our story is told. So whether it's, I don't know, and I'm shooting from the hip here, former Casa Amadeo, which was where, my dad used to get his Fania LPs, like that place to me was, when I knew my dad was going to go buy music, I would always ask to tag along. I just loved running around there, listening to salsa. Y de hecho, soy muy salsera. So I would look at the different places where Latinos have made a mark. I've always had a curiosity about an address in particular, and I would want to go see it. There's this song called "Hay Fuego en el 23." And it's en el 23 de la 110, meaning 23, presumably East 110th Street in El Barrio, and where there was supposedly a fire that the salsa song was written about. These are the different things that I think would help younger generations really feel like this city is ours too.
I doubt with being a legislator and a mother of 2 kids, I doubt you have any time to just walk around aimlessly and think about what you're going to do related to any kind of big decisions that you have to make. But is there a park or a place in Queens or anywhere else in the city that you go to for that?
Yes, Flushing Meadows Corona Park. And it's because I have so many memories of my childhood there. It's where I learned how to ride a bike. It's where I played soccer as a kid. But also, even if we don't have that much time to walk around aimlessly, and we definitely don't, that's what call time is for. When we're making phone calls, I try to be up and out, and not bogged down at a desk somewhere. I think actually walking in nature is really important. I actually love camping. I did a lot of camping this past summer. I even did a little beach camping for the first time.
Is there a book that you recently read that you recommend people and family members to read?
Well, the last full book that I read is called Black Edge. Black Edge is a book about Steve Cohen and his exploits as a financier, as a hedge fund manager and investor. One that I need to finish, which I haven't, is called Invisible Child. And you may recall there was a little girl that Attorney General Letitia James was really trying to help. Her name is Dasani. She's not a little girl anymore, but the book is about her and talks a lot about poverty, being poor in New York City. I'm really hoping to finish that book by the end of the year.
That was a huge thing back when de Blasio won the election for the first time in 2013. And Dasani, she, from what I recall, she even spoke at the inauguration of Bill de Blasio, the mayor that you worked for. Do you use artificial intelligence at all? Is there one AI program, company, app that you use often?
Well, I think, we have done some brainstorming using ChatGPT and things like that. I think AI is a reality. And what we want is, of course, to make sure that it is used responsibly. And, there's no sense in not using the tools that are available. I just don't think it should replace human work, human voice, both literally and figuratively. And in fact, I actually passed a bill to protect actors and broadcasters, to protect their likeness, their image, and their voice, so that studios don't take advantage of them precisely for that reason.
If you weren't working in politics, and that might happen a year from now or two, what would you like to do?
Well, I think I'm a public servant at heart. I do think that, we're living in an era when there's a lot of performance and theater in politics, and people are very scripted. I'm not a very good performer. I'm a public servant. I like government. I like government a lot more than I like politics. I like, being able to put a smile on people's faces. I like giving them some peace of mind, knowing that, some hardship they're going through can be taken care of. So if I weren't to be state senator, maybe I'm not sure exactly what I would do, but I definitely know that I would only feel fulfilled if the job is something that allows me to help people.
And just to finish the interview, because you mentioned Steve Cohen, he is behind the casino project that you opposed in Queens, but that a few days ago, the plan was approved. If and when that casino opens in Queens, would you go there and bet?
Oh, no, I haven't been. I can't even tell you the last time I went to a casino. Yeah. I mean, I did walk around Resorts World when this whole conversation about casino licenses started, just because I'm not a gambler, and I kind of just wanted to see what the ambiance was like. But other than that, I mean, I've been to Vegas for a few conferences, but even then I didn't gamble. That's just not my cup of tea.
Okay. Jessica Ramos, State Senator in Queens. As always, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
You can find Juan Manuel Benitez Wants to Know on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Substack, and YouTube. Rate, subscribe. comment. Let me know what you think. That's it for this episode. Thank you for watching and listening. I'm Juan Manuel Benitez.